Hello, Hypatia, and um, thank you for your extreme high patience uh, while I get certain things sorted out. Um, Everything is still a bit of a mess, but it's a creative chaos. I've had some sleep, which was lovely, um, and you deserve at least, well, 2 or 3 readings. I don't know. We are spoilt for choice with stuff, and I'm going to return to Caves of God, but because I am disorganized, one more diversion, if you don't mind, and this, I think, will cheer me up. I hope it cheers you up. I think it's one of the funniest books I have. And I know humour is risky and very subjective, but it's the sort of thing I like to read. I'm sorry, I'll tell you what it is. It's by the chap, it's the book you can see on the screen now. It's called All the World's a Globe, From Lemur to Cosmonaut, by a fictitious fellow, I think, called Patrick Barlow, who is a British comedian who does all these wonderful, slightly bizarre, slightly surreal parodies of history and of culture. He's on the radio a lot. As you'll hear, he's very suited to radio. He has done some wonderful television as well. And I'm very excited because in a couple of weeks' time I will be getting his a CD of his version of the French Revolution, which was wonderful, and it's not available commercially anymore, so I will happily share that with you if you wish. Anyway, we'll see if you like this first. It's just he gives this as a parody of a lecture, of a lesson, if you like. He's sort of pretends to be teaching about things, about the history of the world, and does not really do so. But with some joy, I have discovered that there is a chapter entitled Satalhuyuk, and I thought this would fit in with Caves of God. Some of it is exactly the same as Caves of God, but I won't try to emulate his voice. But if you can imagine a slightly old-fashioned, slightly odd teacher from school, perhaps, and this is what he writes about Satalhuyuk. Chapter 19. He with the longest ladder has the least children. Old Satalhuyukian witticism. One of the first cities was Satalhuyuk. This was approximately the size of Coventry, and is thought to have been in Turkey, although the dots above the U's have given rise to the belief that it may well have been in Sweden. The Satalhuyuk people, or Satalhuyukians as they were known, wore nothing except a rather crude loincloth, both inside and outside. But we should not condemn this, seeing as they were still very prehistoric in their attitudes, despite the fact that they had invented urban dwellings, rudimentary cooking utensils, and an early form of floor covering. They lived thousands and thousands of years ago, and nobody quite knows when they lived, but it was certainly a long, long, long time ago anyway. So, really, the permissiveness of their dress and their lack of doors shouldn't be held against them. The Greeks, who lived much later, wore even less, and sometimes nothing at all, and therefore they have no excuse whatsoever. Çatalhöyük'ün homes were 1 story high, with full central heating, 3 bedrooms, and damp-proofing. The only drawback was that there were no doors, seeing as doors hadn't yet been invented. For this reason, they entered their houses by climbing a ladder and crawling through a special hole in the roof, which can't have been very easy on a dark night after a couple of glasses of homemade papyrus beer, particularly seeing as all Çatalhöyük'ün houses looked identical, and nobody had invented numbers yet. In other words, you could easily have found yourself crawling through the roof of the wrong house and falling 15 feet onto some semi-naked prehistoric dinner party. Or worse. And there's then a lovely little silly sketch of a Çatalhöyük'ün home. I'll see if I can find it, or I'll try to copy it at some point. Right. The Çatalhöyük'üns, I love that word. The Çatalhöyük'üns were, however, a very interesting people with numerous customs, one of which was to bury their dead relatives under the bed, which some of the more sensitive members of the Çatalhöyük'ün community could probably have done without, I should imagine. They had religious reasons, obviously, which I wouldn't wish to question, but it must have been a little eerie, to say nothing of the smell in a hot climate such as Turkey. Having a meal with all your dead relatives going back for centuries stuffed under the bed right next to where you were eating your pudding must have been a bit unpleasant, to say the least. In our sketch, he's just referring to the little drawing I just mentioned. In our sketch, we have removed part of the wall so you can see inside what a Çatalhöyük'ün's house would have looked like. Please note all the dead bodies. This removed wall is in order to facilitate your seeing inside, and is not the result of someone who missed the hole in the roof. The Çatalhöyük'üns could not write, owing to the fact that they were still very ancient, and they had not heard of hieroglyphics. Neither could they read, though this is not surprising, obviously, seeing as they had nothing to read. For this reason, there were no newspapers. However, they were an imaginative people, and they did invent a rather unique form of human newspaper to keep informed of international world events, which are very important, as we know. For this person, a dangerous criminal was plucked out of a Çatalhöyük'ün prison and forced to memorize all the world's news that was available at the time, including sporting events, the arts, women's issues, classified advertising, jumble sales, and local entertainment. The criminal was then hung by his ankles in the Çatalhöyük'ün Civic Centre while he recited the whole lot for 10 or 11 hours without a break, before being beaten to death by the audience. This happened daily, with a choice of 2 criminals on Sundays. And having given us that exquisite insight into Çatalhöyük'ün social life, he then gives us some homework. Things to do. Number 1. Unfortunately, not a lot happened in Çatalhöyük, as far as historians can understand, apart from the occasional burial at home, the daily beating to death of newscasters, and occasional arguments over domestic chores. Notice also how few feature films have been inspired by Çatalhöyük. Queen Elizabeth of Çatalhöyük was planned as a Hollywood spectacular in 1940, but nothing ever happened. So it is a little hard to suggest anything for the student to do to enhance his or her knowledge of this fascinating period. But you might like to consider: A. Compile a Çatalhöyük'ün washing up rota. B. Write an essay entitled The Contents of a Çatalhöyük'ün Lady's Handbag. Or C. Paint a picture of a Çatalhöyük'ün old person being stuffed under the bed. And that, surprisingly, or perhaps mercifully, is all that Patrick Barlow has to tell us about the civilization of Çatalhöyük. He doesn't seem to know as much about Çatalhöyük as Mr. Kostov does. Kostov, I beg his pardon. Kostov. So, having indulged myself in silliness over Çatalhöyük, I think I will tonight try to get back to Caves of God, and I know I keep saying this, but I will, and I want to. I hope you're really well and happy today, and let's try to get in touch at some point. All the very best. Bye bye.